There are several text editing programs available within the command line environment that allow you to create and modify files. These include Vim, Emacs, and Nano, among others. We'll focus on Nano in this video, as it's my personal go-to editor. It's arguably the easiest one to get up and running with, and for me, it's been sufficient for any text editing I've needed to do. Nano is likely already available on whatever system you're working on, so I'm going to assume that's the case. If you enter the nano command and get a message that it's not found, you might have to search around online a bit to get it installed, but I anticipate that won't be necessary in the great majority of cases. So, let's start by simply typing the nano command and hitting enter. Doing so opens up a blank text editor where you can start typing, just like you would in a program like Microsoft Word. I'll type "getting started with nano" on the first line. Notice there are several commands listed at the bottom of the screen. While not an exhaustive list of commands available in Nano, there are a few on here you'll likely use frequently. The most important of these is probably the exit command, which has a shortcut of Control X. When I type Control X, Nano recognizes the file has been modified and asks if I want to save the changes. I can simply type Y to save, N to exit without saving, or Control+C to cancel and continue editing the file. Note that Y and N aren't case sensitive, either lowercase or uppercase should work. I'll choose Y, and then I get a prompt to name the new file. I'll call it testfile.txt, hit enter, and this closes the Nano editor and returns me back to my command prompt. If I now list the contents of the directory with ls, I see that new file. The less command, which was introduced in a previous video on viewing files at command line, can be used to see the contents of the file. But remember that less doesn't allow for editing, only viewing. If we want to make further edits to the file, we can get out of less by typing Q, and from there open the file back up in Nano. This time, instead of opening a new blank file, we'll specify the file we want Nano to open, testfile.txt. While we're in here, I'll try to highlight a few commands that I find useful and a few things that tend to trip folks up when starting to use Nano. First, let's deal with copy, cut, and paste. How this will work might depend on what type of computer you're using. I'm on a Mac, and so my copy shortcut is Apple+C, and likewise, my paste shortcut is Apple+V. These generally work as expected in Nano. I can highlight a line and copy and paste it as I would in any other program. If the copy and paste shortcuts on your computer are instead Control+C and Control+V, those might not work as you expect. This is because those combinations represent shortcuts already built into Nano for other purposes. For example, we can see at the bottom of the screen that Control+V is a shortcut to jump ahead to the next page. You could try including Shift, for example, Control+Shift+V to paste, and see if that works. Worst case scenario, you can just right-click and choose Copy and Paste. Cutting or deleting lines of text works a little differently. The cut command in Nano is Control+K, and the uncut or paste command is Control+U. The cut command works on entire lines. I'm going to create a third line, test line 1, copy and paste this line several times to have a little more to work with, and then update the line numbers at the end of each of those lines by hand. Now, with the cursor anywhere on line 3, the one that says test line 1, I'll use the cut shortcut, which is Control+K, and this deletes the entire line. I can then move somewhere else in the file. I'll go down below the last line and hit Control+U to paste that line back in. But what if you want to delete a larger section of text? With the cursor at the beginning of the second line, I'm going to hit Control+Shift+6. You might notice when you do this that a black box toward the bottom of the screen appears that says Mark Set. Now, using the arrows will highlight specific sets of text that you can then apply a command to. For example, I'll highlight lines 2, 3, and 4, and then use the cut command, Control+K, to delete these 3 lines. When you're ready to exit, use Control+X again, choose Y to save, and this time, the file name is provided for you. If you want to keep the name and update and update the file, simply hit enter. Alternatively, you can edit the file name. Doing so will save the new changes to a file with a new name, and the previous file will be retained in its original state. One thing to keep in mind here is that existing files will be overwritten without any warning. For example, say you already have a file in your working directory named results.txt. Then you were to save this current file with the same name. Doing so would overwrite the original results.txt file, so be careful about how you name files. Regardless of the file name you use, pressing enter will save or write the file and return you to your command prompt. One more thing you'll probably notice early on when working in Nano is that you can't point and click to move your cursor to a new place in the file. This is one aspect where I find command line based plain text editors like Nano to be a little less efficient than a program like Word. However, there are options available to help you navigate through your file a little easier. First, as we saw earlier, Ctrl+V will scroll down a page at a time. And similarly, Ctrl+Y takes you up a page at a time. Also, you can use Ctrl+Space to move left to right across lines much more quickly than using the arrows. Those three shortcuts alone will go a long way in improving your efficiency when working in Nano. Finally, remember that Nano is just one example of a text editor that you can use within your terminal. It's the one I prefer, but what's most important is that you settle on one you like, so that by repeatedly using it over time, you'll become more and more comfortable and efficient working in it.